in everyone's opinion. I'm not doing.
Going live in 10.
Call this Topsham Board of Selectmen meeting to order, Topsham Select Board meeting to order from the Donald A. Russell Meeting Room, April 7th, 2022. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Patty, would you call the roll?
I will. David Douglas.
I am here.
Marie Brilliant. Here. Ruth Lyons. Here. Matt Nixon.
Present.
Roland Tufts. And all present. And we have a town manager, Derek Skripchansky at the head table, and my assistant town manager, Mark Waltz, tending to the recording.
Thank you, Patty.
Welcome.
Town manager's report.
Welcome, everyone. The annual Brunswick Topsham Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day is scheduled for April 30th at the Brunswick Public Works Department. Registration for Topsham residents will begin on Monday, April 11th, and a link to the registration will be available Monday morning on the Topsham and Brunswick websites. On April 19th, I'll be providing an ARPA funding request presentation to the Saginaw County Commissioners, the Brunswick Topsham Water District, Midcoast Region Redevelopment Authority, and MSAT 75 will be present in support of our request. On April 25th at 5:30 p.m. here in the Don Russell Meeting Room, LED light conversion presentations for Topsham will be provided by Realterm Energy, Affinity LED Lighting, and Central Maine Power to the Select Board. And for the next several weeks, Maine Department of Transportation crews will be performing maintenance work on the bridges that connect Route 196 to Route 1. The ramp from 196 East onto Route 1 North will be closed April 11th to the 22nd. And the exit off Route 1 South to Route 196 West will be closed from April 22nd to May 2nd. Of course, depending on the work, they could get finished sooner, but during the time that they're working, it will be closed. Signs will be posted along all detour routes, and message boards will be repositioned or be positioned on Route 196 West at the junction Y295 and Route 201 North of Route 196. And thank you and have a good evening.
Any questions? Look at that. No boards, no committees. Public comment?
Regarding things coming up tonight?
Public comment is anything you want to talk about, but we are having so if you're here for the ordinance items for the town meeting warrant, we'll be having, if you're looking to speak at that, during that public hearing is probably the best time, but you're welcome at any time to.
Okay, I do have another comment.
Yeah, general comment, this is where you would want to do it.
Okay.
Yep. So when you come up, you just give your name and your address, please.
Right, Deirdre Sullivan, 34 Eider, Topsham. So just as an aside, the planning board did approve a site for a solar farm on the Mac Hunter's property, bordering the Lover's Lane and the town ponds. At the end of the conclusion of the first meeting, the town asked the developer to conduct a hydrogeological survey to figure out the impacts of removing 30 acres of trees, forested land, on the recharging of the water table over which this is going to be built. So that the conclusion of that meeting, it was understood by me and several of the other residents that attended that meeting, that they would do their own hydrogeological survey and address that problem because of the problems in Bay Park with water and flooding. I'm sure you know all about Mr. Waltz. So when they reconvened, the developer came back with an approximately 12-year-old hydrogeological survey data that was reviewed by other hydrogeologists. Both reports had a caveat at the end of each report saying, but we cannot state how removing all this forested land will affect the recharging of the water table. That's clearly stated in both the review, both of the hydrogeologist and geologist who reviewed the old study. The planning board went ahead and approved the site without knowing what the impact is going to be on that water table. We charge stripping 32 acres of old forested land. On top of that, it is, up until recently, was under the aquifer protection overlay. For some reason, that was rescinded sometime before the Glades development, because it covered all of Bay Park and over to the Glades and over towards Arbor. So I would like to have a hydrogeological, an actual current geological survey done on that site to assure the residents who have already dealt with a multitude of water problems, to assure us or give us the, before the site is approved for building, to let us know that it's not going to cause an increase in that water charge and cause extensive flooding within the Bay Park development. When I brought this up to the planning board, I asked, well, if you've approved it and you're going to go forward, what recourse do we have when our basements start to fill up? And they told me to go back to the select board because part of that study from 12 years ago was a two-phase study. One to drain down the ponds, which had a great positive impact on the whole neighborhood. The other was extensive new drainage system within the Bay Park area, which has not occurred and which is not on the agenda. So my issue is with, at the end of the first planning board meeting regarding this site, it was conveyed to the developer that they would get a hydrogeological survey done. They didn't. They had their hydrogeologist review old data, which did not address the recharging of the water table along with the stripping of the forest. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay.
So, and when I tried to explore ways to appeal that decision, there is no appealing site plan approval without hiring a lawyer and going to the state. Codes, you can appeal, code decisions. Apparently not site plan approvals. So I'm bringing it to you because I feel that there's over 400 people who could be affected should the water table in that area not drain the way they think it's going to drain or be more effective than they guess that it might. So I really don't think we've had people lose tons of personal property due to flooding and that. Well, I'm sure I hope that you're all aware of the problems in Bay Park with the lead. Okay. So I'm just gonna leave that at
So,
that. Yep.
just let me, because there were 2 things there. Obviously, issues about the planning board and such, that's something I think we need to do is have the town manager, because he's our liaison to the staff and
I
and
reached
such.
out to both the town manager and Mr. Waltz prior to the first planning board meeting, and I did not hear back from either.
Okay. But they'll
Yeah.
certainly answer us.
Okay.
They'll get us some feedback to what you've said in regards to the water plan and such, and what's happened there. And
Could you also get an explanation on to why the aquifer protection overlay was removed from that area?
that was just done 2 years now, I believe, and it was even before. It had nothing to do with the Glades project, as you've tried to make it sound like it was. That was to the new standards, if I'm correct, Rod. Yeah, you want to hit the,
That's okay, I don't need to know, that's fine. You don't have
Okay.
to address that.
You can come in, we can chat about it.
okay,
Okay, I will pass.
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with the glades or anything like that. It was an update to,
If someone had brought that concern to me, apparently I'm outspoken. A family from a home place had brought that concern up to me.
and then the second part you had talked about, the draining of the ponds, the plan that had taken place. So I know I was on the board at that time that we had done that. We had a two-step process, just as you said. It was drain the ponds down, and then we'd come through and repair piping and such, thinking that it needed to be two steps to make the corrections.
Mhm.
After the ponds were drained, there was such an improvement that there was no need to move on to the next step
Right.
immediately. If, when we do rebuilding the work and such down there, is my understanding it would take place naturally. But there was no need to immediately go and spend taxpayer money
Right.
on something that had been corrected simply by draining those two ponds down. And you probably know how much that helped, I would imagine.
It certainly helped my basement. I know that, but I know there are still people that have some pumps that run.
So,
The corner of Teal and Eider has a direct feed from their basement to the storm drain outside. And it runs almost constantly.
I mean, and part of this is, in
We were
it
built
needs to be
on a
said,
swamp.
right, Bay Park, I mean, this is,
A lot of
this is
Topsham
a
is built.
swamp
So
area,
I
right?
am trying to mitigate further problems
Right.
is my goal.
So we'll have that, and Ruth can chime in, but definitely on your other points. It's not something I'm super familiar with. I didn't follow it that closely. They'll get back to us, and have you been in touch with Rod and such with the planning department?
I went about as far as I could when I asked about what our recourse would be should this solar farm or the stripping of those woods lead to increased problems in the park. They said you'd have to take it up with the selectmen.
And the last, before you, because I haven't followed this, when we're talking 30 acres, how much of that is already that wide open sandy pit area?
Oh, no, that's the 30 acres. That is not the wide open sandy pit. It's 50 some odd acres. How many acres is it?
Well, so Dave's right, they are putting solar panels within that sandy area as well.
Yeah.
And within the forest. I don't remember.
They're paying, their habitat offset fee is for 32 acres of forested land, heavily forested. That's, I don't know if any, they're not that way, but.
That's Bay Park, but all of Topsham is in a high water table.
Yeah.
And there's many residents that have sump pumps and have had them for a long time, to go over Williams Drive, to go over
Oh, yeah.
all that area. It's just low area.
Very familiar.
I lived on Somerset off Narber Avenue.
Right.
Everybody had sump pumps and water in the basement. Having said that, I think we have to be very careful before we move forest land because of that. And I think that, and I'll say it right up front, if this company's looking to do it, they need to pay for a new plan and a new study.
And that's what was instructed at the end of the first meeting. Apparently they interpreted it a different way and the planning board agreed with the developer.
Because there is a lot of water in that area and the disruption of trees and stuff. I'm not a geologist or anything, but it just seems like.
It would have an impact. And one of the caveats, they said, well, the water drains away from Bay Park topographically. But if you look at the brook, there's a brook that runs along Hunter Lane at the end of Bay Park, and it flows down towards Home Place. There's the flow of water, the water's just everywhere over there. So, our concern as a group, as residents in Bay Park, was the effect of removing those trees on recharge of the water table, recharging of the water table. So, and I can leave my contact information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please do that. And I'll slide it over to Rod, and I'll get it back. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else have any?
The idea, just the idea of cutting trees down for a solar farm.
Right.
I'm better dependent now for oil fire power plant or a coal fire power plant or a, I mean, in some cases, a nuclear power plant. So that's something I agree with. I'll go on record. And a nuclear power. One thing I did have a question about was the reports that were mentioned. So like, they clearly weren't specifically for or addressing deforestation due to installation of a solar farm, right? So yeah, I'm just kind of curious where this came from, like why these guys use these older reports.
And I don't even know what the directive was. I mean, that's all gonna be gotten.
You guys can get the reports, you can read them.
Cool.
To learn more about what we all looked at. And what information is provided.
And each report ended with a caveat. We would need more study to know what the effect of removal of these trees would be on the recharging of the water table. And when I questioned the board regarding that statement, I was told by Mr. Span that that is a common disclaimer, which I did not agree with.
So correspondence, anyone have any correspondence this week, 2 weeks, whatever we've been through?
Aside from the DO.
Yeah, the duo, sorry. Just so everyone knows, the duo email you got today, there's one about duo, don't delete it. That's the correspondence.
I don't even remember seeing it.
Yeah. I'll send it to you. It's in my waste paper basket. Any adjustments to the agenda? Consent calendar, approval of the minutes of the regular select board meeting, March 17, 2022. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Unanimous. All right, public hearing. So this is going to be a little bit different than every other years past that I recall. 22-21, consideration any appropriate action on all non-budgetary articles for placement on the special town meeting warrant. So I'll give a little background and update to anyone here or at home. Normally, we do the entire warrant at one time. This year, with so many costs changing rapidly in the last 6 or 8 weeks, we felt we had a little bit of wiggle room where we could wait another couple weeks for budgetary items. So if all of a sudden our costs for natural gas or diesel fuel or gas, any large change due to the environment that we're in came about, we could react and get our budget to be correct. So what we're going to do tonight is take up all non-budgetary items for the warrant. So essentially, we're going to do everything except for Article 4 through 9. We'll discuss Articles 1, 2, 3, and then 10 through 28 with the hopes of moving them to the town meeting. And then 2 weeks from tonight on the 21st, we will take up those budgetary items. We'll make sure everything's solid, the numbers are accurate, and then our finance committee will come in with us and we'll move items 4 through 9 to the town meeting warrant. The good news as far as for those budget items, I don't believe there's been anything that we've needed to run and change. Everything's pretty stagnant.
No, just minor changes.
Yeah, so nothing's going haywire. So, public hearing, I'll gavel open the public hearing. And once I gavel open the public hearing, we'll take all comments. What I'll do is I'll go down through items, each one, Article 1, 2, 3, and then 10 through 28. And as I get to them, if you have a public comment about them, feel free to come up and talk about it or chime in at home on the Zoom link, submit your question. And at the end, if someone comes in late and they missed article number 12, what they wanted to talk about, I'll take one last set of comments. And then once we close out of the public hearing, there's no more public comment and it will just be up to the board to make decisions on what to, or if anything, to move to the warrant for the town meeting. Does that sound like a good plan? Everyone's in. Public meeting is open.
No.
That's your job, tell us. All right. So 22-21, it's our consideration and appropriate action on all non-budgetary articles, replacement on the special town meeting warrant. Article 1, to elect a moderator. I'm just gonna look quick. If no one's talking, I'm just gonna keep moving. Article 2, to see if the town will ratify a change in the date for the special town meeting from May 18, 2022 to May 25, 2022, with a backup date, May 26, 2022, for venue availability. Last year, when we made our plans, we were hoping to meet on May 18th. Due to availability of a venue, we've had to move that. So before we can technically take on the warrant, we need to change the date. To see if the town will ratify a change to allow the select board by a two-thirds majority to waive the interest penalty on property taxes for up to 6 months beyond the due date during a declared state of emergency within the past 6 months. This is as COVID hit and we didn't have the ability, should we had needed to, which we never did have the need to waive any interest penalty on property taxes. This gives us the authority to do that during a declared emergency. So we're going to now move to Article 10. And some of these, are you planning on, if there's any questions, you'll come be the man. Article 10, to see if the voters will adopt an ordinance to amend the Topsham zoning ordinance to amend chapter 225-50, apartment buildings and multifamily developments to allow an increased density for multifamily units within the mixed-use commercial zoning district. And there's a series of underlined texts that go on. If I read, yep, jump on up.
So, just a quick question, how much of a change is this from our development overlay?
Everything that.
Development transfer overlay. Because we already have a density set for developed areas.
Mhm.
So.
All the changes are in blue.
Mhm.
Okay,
So there's, they want to get rid of a clause saying that the single family dwelling, if it's purchased and then raised, currently, the standard is that you cannot have an increased amount of dwellings on that same site.
Mhm.
It's struck through, like they want it removed.
Mhm.
I was confused because, or concerned, because it's not very specific, like if it's an R1 or R2 that they buy a single family dwelling in, will they then be able to build at a higher density?
I think this is strictly within the mixed-use commercial zone, MUC. So
that's
it wouldn't
the
be
only-
anywhere else.
Nowhere else. And the LB and the LI.
Right, this is and just some background here. Boy, it's been, COVID makes you lose time. Several years ago, a developer that's within the MUC down in the mall. Malls are changing. It's not putting in stores any longer. People want to work close to where they live and such. And they came and asked, would the town consider, and then they worked through this process, would the town consider allowing commercial development within that zone, but possibly having housing above it, kind of the old Main Street sort of storefront on the bottom and apartments up top, because people do have more of an interest in living where they work and being in an area. So that's where this came from, and it's only in the MUC.
Right, and
So
that,
it's in that zone.
and the proposed density is 18 dwellings per acre.
Yep, okay.
That's,
And that's the one I don't have in my head.
Yes.
He shook his head, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's extremely dense.
Yep.
But has anyone thought of the unintended consequences of going ahead and greenlighting that amount of density? There's no cap on the number of dwellings total within the MUC?
Come on up, Ron. Yep.
Yeah, these are great questions. And these are, the planning board had multiple workshops with this discussion that kind of came up with this number, maximum density. So it is a maximum density of 18 units per acre. So that on a large site would be a lot of units. There are other constraints out in the MUC district that were looked at and we mapped out. There's traffic impacts. There's other things that constrain how much development occurs. Building height is another one. So even if, the building height out there is 45 feet. So the MUC zoning district, we looked at a particular site that the gentleman before you 2 years ago now, that we calculated for that development to occur, it would need approximately close to that maximum density. The other sites within the MUC were analyzed as far as how much could be built here. And then there could be a lot of building, but I think that they go through that review process and understand the impacts of that, and the planning board would have some oversight of that.
That answer your question?
So
Come on up,
there's-
you gotta be up top.
So there's no cap on the maximum amount of.
Yeah.
Right.
There is, you just,
Well,
So
it
she's
said it
saying
would-
the build out, if you put every buildable square inch of the Topsham Fair Mall into housing units, then there's no cap.
okay,
But I would argue there's no cap for market baskets or any other use that we allow out there. But there's open space ratios per parcel. There's other constraints that aren't really involved in this ordinance we're amending right now.
And the other unintended consequence would be the strain on the school system.
no, and I understand,
I've reached out to Holly Pop, the chairman of the SAB 75, and she has not been contacted about these changes.
yep,
Just
and she
as-
wouldn't be.
Right.
And she won't, this is, this goes for a large portion, if someone chime in if I'm wrong. These are the type of things that through our planning here in town, people have asked for.
The tax base.
They've looked
increase,
for.
yes.
They've looked to have places where maybe you can have younger families, younger people, more housing. And these are the types of things. And you're right, and it absolutely comes at a cost to our schools. Anytime somebody says, we want younger families, the first thing in my head is, I know what it is. It's the cost to the schools, and I understand that. But the community is looking for these types of projects and these items.
Right.
Am I wrong in saying that from the comp plan and such?
No. So nowhere out, and where are so outside of the MUC, there's no other changes in the densities,
This only, it states very specifically,
not like industrial or any other areas.
if it was stated there, it would say that. It's very specific, and I've said this,
Okay.
it is only the MUC.
All right, I just want to clarify.
And you have to have water and sewer available too.
Yes, I knew that, yeah, that is.
Anything else, Mark? Do you have one on there? Anyone else? No. And what happens, just so people are aware, Articles 10, 11, they come with a planning board recommendation. The board usually just moves them on. We don't put a recommendation to it, we just move them to the warrant. Because we have not spent, we're the only people that can move it to a warrant. But there, it will come with or without their recommendation. Article 11, to see if the voters will adopt an ordinance to amend the Topsham zoning ordinance to amend chapter 225-60-19D, solar energy conversion systems, dimensional standards to allow for 0 lot line setbacks on one owner multi-parcel internal lot lines. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, I'll let-
No, he just said it makes sense. Come on up.
Makes sense if you're not right next to them. Right now, we do have, it's as the incentive for the community solar power. The limit is within 5 miles. You don't want to erase habitat in large swaths in order to install solar panels. The incentive is to go for green energy. But if you're allowing multiple 5 megawatt parcels, where is the limit? The town of Lovell just downvoted a 180 acre solar farm in their town because of the vastness of it. There's a solar project on 302 in Freiburg. Basically, the soil under it, it was stripped of all root systems, all topsoil. Now, when it rains, the soil runs out onto Route 302. So I don't think our solar farms, these solar farms have our town's best interest in heart. So my question to the board, before you move it to a warrant, is what advantage does the town see from approving that? Like, what is the advantage to the town?
This one is strictly is to allow for 0 lot line setbacks on multi-parcels. This is, we're
Internal too. that's-
internal, correct. We're not
Wouldn't be
taking up
impacting
solar.
you If you live next to it, it would only be impacting the setbacks within the actual parcel itself, if there were multiple parcels.
Right, so if one company owned 4 parcels and wanted to put 4 megawatt solar farms side by side by side.
But it would only apply to lots 2 and 3. Because it's the internal lots of the large square.
Again, what's the benefit to the town to having large solar arrays?
But that's not what I will say, we're not arguing large solar arrays tonight. And I understand, but this is specifically about the multi-parcel internal lines.
So,
Okay, I'll-
so what I want to know, is there an existing company that has a solar farm that wants to add on to it?
So I would invite you to come to the planning board, because what you're bringing up is something the planning board wants to discuss. And that's the capacity and how many more of these do we really want to be? So that's a very good question. That's a very good concern. In regard to tonight's ordinance amendment, if this were a big parcel with a couple property lines in the middle of it, every property line institutes a setback obstructor. So solar farms have setbacks. What this does is hopefully reduces the impact by allowing them to stand that setback instead of spreading it out. So it is a good thing, I believe, for the town to reduce the overall and let them cluster their solar site instead of spreading it on multiple parcels. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with this.
And have there been any workshops? with that?
Ma'am.
Have they been-
Ma'am, we have to do everything
Oh, I'm sorry.
because everyone's at home and such.
I'm sorry. So, again, my concern is just.
Yeah, the
sprawling,
capacity,
The
yeah.
capacity,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
the-
said just lots.
That's actually something they want to regroup with the solar advocacy group that was in town.
Mhm.
And have that discussion about how many of these, and there's a limiting factor with CMP allowing them
Right,
to tie in, so
they have to
one of the
contract for
approved
that.
farms, I think was denied by CMP. So one of the approved farms may not be happening. But that's a bigger discussion that's outside of this ordinance.
Right, so,
And I can contact you when we meet to talk.
and another concern of mine, obviously, is a sprawling solar farm. Does the town, as an entity, need to step back and take a look at current guidelines, do workshops, so that we're better informed as residents, and we're not kind of blindsided by some projects that just kind of pop up?
But I think that's what they're thinking they need to start talking about.
Right, but I'm wondering if you could consider the future date, a moratorium, so that you can stop and start deeply learning about the long-term effects, what's gonna happen in 20 years when all these are going up at the same time, they're all gonna come down at the same time. Where is that going to go? Where are they gonna haul those old solar panels? There's nothing to say that they can't just haul them to Topsham transfer station. They do have bonds for removal, but it's not specific. There's not a whole lot of specific language about what happens, when it happens, that sort of thing.
I would say we're pretty safe that they'll never go to the Topsham transfer station.
Pretty safe, but I meant also as a state as a whole.
Right.
So, but just my concern.
Nothing else, Mark? No.
Right now, the only attendee is Pam, because that's how she feeds.
Okay.
But I'll let you know if we get another attendee.
All right. Number 12, Article 12, to see if the voters will adopt an ordinance to amend the Topsham zoning ordinance to amend chapter 225-33, signs to remove the 10-year sunset clause associated with non-conforming signs. I'll just give a quick, if I recall, this is 10 years ago, probably roughly, we created the sign ordinance, and any sign that did not meet our ordinance at 10 years must immediately take it down and fix it. Time has come, we've thought about it. I think is what this is, and rather than telling people to take down a perfectly good sign and cost them money, we will allow them to continue on until they need to naturally replace their sign. So anyone at home, that's what this is about. 13, to see if the voters will adopt an ordinance to amend the Topsham zoning ordinance to amend chapter 225-18 historic overlay district to remove the public hearing requirement and replace with regular meeting notification requirements. Article 14, to see if the voters will adopt an ordinance to amend the Topsham zoning ordinance to amend chapter 225-17G9 dimensional requirements, chapter 185-11 administration, chapter 185-15 construction and subdivisions to change the terms from office of the assessor to addressing officer. Without thinking, this sounds like bureaucratic
Like a
stuff
major
that we
issue with it.
must have to take care of.
I might have.
If you did, we were gonna say, I was gonna say, take it up with people that make rules. You want to talk to people who don't think about outcomes, go to Augusta.
Yeah, I agree.
Article 15, to see if the voters will adopt an ordinance to amend the Topsham Code to amend chapter 91 building construction, chapter 115 electrical standards, chapter 124 fire prevention, to update these codes to current state standards. And there's a significant handout with that for anyone that grabbed it. And it looks like about everything is struck out, saying that we will now follow standards. And we're gonna get out of the business of piecemealing. Is my layman's description. Is that right, Ron? Thank you. Article 16, to see if the voters will accept Mountain Road to be named Can-Am Drive as town-owned way. That would go from Highland Green to the former, there's also a handout tonight, but that will go from the four-way intersection just beyond the golf course clubhouse in Highland Green to where the back gate for the Navy Annex housing used to be. It's been brought up to standards, and the last bit of items are being taken care of, but it has been inspected and it's good to go.
Let me provide a quick update. Yeah, there's going through final inspections currently,
Yep.
so I
Okay,
misspoke when I wrote that. A couple items should be buttoned up by April 21st, whereas your next public hearing warrant article. If that doesn't occur, I'll alert you to that fact.
okay,
Minor, what I would call minor items. Construction wise, it's in good shape.
okay.
It's paperwork.
So think about it when we get to this. Does the board want to hold 16 for the 21st or deal with it if we have to take it off? We can take things off a warrant.
We can vote it down at town meeting.
No, or we could vote. I'd rather take it off the
I
warrant.
would too.
Right,
Yeah, we can remove from a warrant, right? Something you said.
Sure. If you want to be safe, just table it.
It's like the 21st.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay. We'll do that later. We can't now. Article 17, to see if the voters will authorize the select board to accept on behalf of the town any coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds, ARPA, received by the town from the federal government, enter into agreements or other documentation required in connection therewith, and appropriate and expend such funds in any eligible ARPA infrastructure project for lost public sector revenue to the extent of the reduction in revenue experienced due to the pandemic. As the select board deems in the best interest of the town, these expenditures may be reflected outside of the town's approved budget. This one is one we will put as a ought to pass or not. It essentially allows us, when we receive these ARPA funds, to be able to expend them under these guidelines.
Yeah.
But again, this is all new stuff from COVID. we've never had to have this influx of money that we could do things with. Article 18, to see if the voters will adopt the provisions of 5 MRS subsection 18252-C PL 2021, chapter 286, as allowed by the main PERS rule, chapter 803. Mr. Manager, if anyone has questions on that, that is all yours. Main PERS is just, it's a retirement system, right?
Retirement plan. Mark, do you want to make these some details?
Yeah.
Apparently, in response to some municipal employees over the past couple of years, the legislature changed the law. Until the legislature changed the law last year, you had a one-time shot to join when you first went into municipal employment, and if you didn't join, you could never join later. The legislature said towns could offer employees that were currently employed but not in the main state retirement system a one-shot deal to sign on by November 1st of 2021. And any towns could also allow employees in their first 5 years of employment to have a second chance, and that's our annual chance really, to join in the fall. There's an open enrollment period. The town's main state pension fund did not want to make towns have to have special town meetings just for this issue. So they said, through rulemaking, they said you could either join by November 1st of 2021, or you could join, you could wait until you had your first town meeting after that date and offer it to employees. We've contacted them. They said that we could have until June 30th to allow people to sign up if the town authorizes it at the May 25th town meeting. So if you put this on the warrant and it's approved, it would give employees that are not part of main PERS a chance to sign up.
Excellent. Thank you. It's just what you said to us a little while ago, but said much better. We don't get it. So Articles 19. I'll read them because that's the rule. We can take care of it in May. Article 19, see if the voters will vote to pay for tax abatements and applicable interest granted during fiscal year 2022-2023 from overlay. An explanation to this, the assessor is authorized to raise overlay under 36 MRSA, section 710, but voter authorization is required to spend overlay. Overlay cannot be more than 5% of the tax commitment. Article 20, fix the date, May 24th, 2023 for the town meeting. 21, fix the dates when taxes are due, Monday, October 17th, Tuesday, April 18th, 2022 and 23 respectively. If you're late, 4% or the maximum amount determined by the state treasurer will be charged, provided we're not in a pandemic and an emergency situation.
Is that what the state recommended? You got that notice?
Yes.
4%?
Article 22, to see if the town will establish a maximum interest rate to be paid on abated taxes, 4%, or the maximum rate established by the treasurer. For delinquent taxes, the interest rate to be paid by the town reduced by 2%. 23, to see if the town will authorize the treasurer with the approval of the select board to waive foreclosure on any tax lien during the course of the fiscal year, leaving the tax lien mortgage in full force in effect as provided in 36 MRSA section 944(1). 24, to see if the town will authorize the select board to dispose of any town-owned property the select board determines not to be needed for the town use upon such terms and conditions as the select board may deem to be in the best interest of the town or otherwise allowed by law. 25, to see if the town will authorize the select board to convey by deeds of quitclaim title or other titles as appropriate any real estate acquired by the town to such persons for such considerations as the select board may in each case determine. Everyone's favorite, number 26, to see if the town will authorize the select board to accept gifts, real estate, and certain funds on behalf of the town under such terms as they deem advisable, spend for the purposes intended, or establish reserve funds as allowed by law, and to spend previously established reserve funds for the purposes intended and allowed by law. I stress the words on behalf of the town, as these are not gifts to the five of us.
Gift cards to like Amazon.
That's correct, no gift cards from Amazon.
Gas cards.
Yeah, we'll take, we're gonna take gas
I'll
cards.
take
now.
a guess.
Article 27, to see if the town will authorize the select board to establish reserve accounts for capital or other statutorily authorized purposes, spend such reserves for the purposes intended as allowed by law, and transfer current balances of the existing capital accounts into the corresponding reserve account. To see if the town will authorize the select board to apply for grants, approve the acceptance of grants, receive grants, appropriate the town's share of the grant from funds raised at a town meeting, expend the grant for the purpose stated in the grant, and enter into agreements or other documentation required in connection therewith. These expenditures may be reflected outside the town's approved budget. Sensing Waltz's word, his work within the town is coming forward.
Said one comment.
Please do.
So, I mean, some of these are pretty dense, and I know in the past we've received some feedback about, being a little more user-friendly, or at least providing a little bit of an explanation for some of the warrant items. And I think Derek could mention he was going to be doing something with, Tiger, is that it?
We just put the warrant in private, we always have.
Gotcha.
Small items, we haven't gotten yet. That's why we have the meetings, coming here. But as far as heavy duty explanations, I think we could look at that this summer.
Okay.
To see how we can kind of redo the format of the warrant and provide some sort of explanation on certain items that appear to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if the format needs to be redone, maybe just like an accompanying document that says, this is what this says. And, yeah.
What people's complaint is, that even though there's a lot of public hearings and there's planning board meetings, it's on the website, not everybody has time or access, whatever, they just feel they should have more notice and more explanation, especially on ordinances, because they feel they shouldn't go to town meeting and just, here it is, what does that mean? So there is opportunity, but they've asked for us to clarify that more. I don't know how, but
Well, actually, there was a suggestion that came up at the Charter Commission, was that, in which Tom Andrew and I talked about, we're planning to undertake in May, is to have an informational section, probably, by Zoom, where we could go through and give a little more detail, explain each item. We thought it was a good suggestion, and it would be useful.
Kind of like we just did. All right, so last call for comments before we close the public hearing on any of the items we just read off. Nothing with you?
No more.
Everyone's good? We close the public hearing. All right. So let me write this right off. We said 16 we were going to table, correct? That's right. So I won't talk about that. Are there any comments, questions, anything from the board before we start going through any feedback that was given, anything?
I just want to address the housing possibly up to the mall.
Well, do it now, because when I get going, I'm gonna go.
Okay, so I might keep going. Just kidding. I think if you watch the new versions of how towns should look and things like that, and do more of a cluster where we were spreading out for many years, where people can walk to Market Basket, to Target, to those places. I personally feel those are great things. We also need housing. So I just want to get that out there. And I think the planning board being careful, and if the people accept it, but we definitely, every community needs more housing. It's unaffordable right now to everyone. I would like to see good housing, not too expensive, but not expensive either, but give people a chance to walk and maybe ride their bicycles or do whatever to go to these places and enjoy it. And I think we have to get back into that community sense. Thank you.
No one's stopping me, I'm going.
Do it.
I make a motion to move Article 1, 2, and 3 to the town meeting warrant for May 25th, 2022.
Second.
Motioned and seconded. So, shoot, yeah, we have to break these up. All those in favor of that particular, so those are on. Okay. 5-0. Article 10. I'm going to make my motion Articles 10 through 15. Hold on. Yep. Okay, yep, 10 through 15 to move to the May 25th, 2022 warrant. Moved and seconded. All in favor of that? All right, so then 16, we are going to, we're going to table it till the 21st. See no objection. Now, so Article 17, we need to give, this comes with the next, well, 17 through 28 comes with an ought to pass recommendation by us. So that's something that needs to be a part of this. So I will make a motion that we take Articles 17 through 28 as ought to pass by the select board to the May 25th, 2022 town meeting.
Second.
Motion seconded. Favor. That's that. Were you questioning? I mean, we already voted that, but your hand went slow. I didn't know if you were
Oh,
going to
no,
say,
no,
okay,
no.
okay.
Got stuck up there.
16, nobody made a motion. You
I
just
make a
said
motion.
table.
You want a motion, so that you
Yeah.
want Patty, you tell me I messed it up.
Mm,
All right.
second.
I make Patty's motion that we table item 16 until the 21st. It is made, seconded by Ruth, Patty. All those in favor? You're welcome. Thank you, Patty. You keep me going. Unfinished business, 2219, consideration any appropriate action to request the removal of the nepotism section of personnel policy. Miss, who's, my son.
You're great.
So what we did is we took your comments that were made at the last meeting and went back and revised the current policy. The highlights of it are that you could have two people in the same department that are relatives. However, if one's going to be the supervisor of the other, they merely can supervise day-to-day tasks. So they could assign what they're doing, but they'd have no role in their evaluation or promotion or hiring decisions. What the town manager would pick an alternate supervisor for that person, so it would probably be the next person up the food chain. And we also added in here that neither the town manager nor myself could have our relatives work because it's hard to come up with an alternate supervisor at that point. Already in the ordinance, so we're not proposing to change this. There's language that allows us to deal with the situation of, say, for instance, maybe two people get married after working for the town or something, or become in a relationship. And then we took out the section that was an exemption for the fire department because we're no longer banning particular, or no longer saying you can't work in the same department for any department. So that's what we did.
Appreciate that, Mark.
So just anyone at home, if they didn't last couple times, a lot of this goes to being creative and trying to find ways to find help, have the ability to promote within departments. And it's been under a lot of talk. This board has undertaken it several times, and we've seen this policy before. And it's fine. So it's a tough subject. I'm not going to lie to anybody. It's been a lot of debate, but it kind of feels like where we're at, and the comment's been made over and over. Right now, we feel confident with the leadership that the town has that this can work. So that's the back story to it. Any questions, what we've seen, concerns? No?
No. I think it's a good job. I argued quite a bit on this and I think a good job. And if anything that's changed can be changed back if need in the future, but not under the solution.
I thought you were gonna jump into a motion. Sorry.
Nope.
All right. I'll make a motion that we remove the nepotism section of the person, update the nepotism section of the personnel policy, correct?
Yes.
So I have a second? Motion and seconded. All those in favor? Unanimous. Welcome. 2222, consideration any appropriate action to award a contract for the Watershed Plan Implementation Grant. I believe it was, I don't know, February, we had approved putting in, and we received the grant, and now Rod is here to talk about all the wonderful people that wanted this job.
Yeah, right. So right after that meeting, I put out the RFQ for contractors and received one response, direct solicited, free, and then put it out to listservs as well, to try to conjure up. And I thought I was actually gonna get a few more than we got, but, one we did get and would be hard to turn down anyway is the one that's been, coming back to this and had done the watershed plan at the beginning. So it's FB Environmental with some subcontractors going on. Another piece of the grant is, cash that we would hold on hand when a development comes in and provide to that development if they choose to do an enhancement to their stormwater project. So that's something new to us. I think it's going to be beneficial for the watershed, but beneficial for economic development purposes as well. You know, we're not forcing you to do more, we're paying you to do more with some MDEP federal funding. So anyway, you have what's in front of you, seeking authorization to move forward to work with that environment.
I'm all good with it, but one of the things and I'm not sure right where I saw it now, because I don't have any highlighted copy, but one of the comments, they commented that they know it's gonna be a challenge working with property owners and such. Some don't own the property. Have you had conversations? Have they had success in the past with some of these
Yeah, I mean, so
difficulties?
to an extent, we've done a few implementation grants now. And I'm confused on our traffic planning and our stormwater planning in the area, knocking on the same doors, having those fun conversations. This one coming up, and Matt actually pointed this out, there's a pretty high cost to the chloride management person that is being hired here as a subcontractor. And to some degree, I look at these grants as kind of pilot projects as well, where we put in a very small amount of cash. The state and feds put in pretty much everything. So this person's coming out of the Long Creek watershed, Portland, South Portland, and a program that they've set up. And I think the hope with this is that we get through that barrier. Someone who really knows what they're talking about is coming here to say how it works in other places. And the outcome, I don't, that's going to be an interesting one. But I think, I guess I've learned over years of incrementalism and little by little we try to address some issues. And this one's an issue that we're trying to address. So, yeah, I don't know what the outcome will be.
No, and I don't expect, but it's nice that they're gonna have someone that's at least had the door shut in before.
Yeah, right.
And maybe can overcome those barriers.
I mean, at the end of the day, all of this, and this is true in this format as well, when things become too expensive to deal with, everybody doesn't want to deal with it. We haven't been forced by the shutting down of stormwater permits in that area or any other threats to us economically. And that's kind of the whole avoidance, what we're trying to do.
Any questions before we motion it?
I was crossing about the WIT advisor, not FPE staff, so they're exceptional, but, I mean, paid for. It's not like it's going on our pot, well, I guess like a fraction of it is to our state tax dollars, but.
Actually, this is, well, the matching is the CFUP money, which is fees that we collect from improvements that can't be done on site. You have a small pot of money, so this isn't even impacting taxpayer.
It's great rate though. I wish I could charge $265 an hour.
I know, I was looking at that. Anything, we'll make a motion for that?
Well, I'll be really mad if you guys shows up with a heat leaf blower.
I make a motion to award the contract for the watershed plan implementation grant to FB Environmental Associates. Second? Second. There we go. All those in favor? I'm going. 22-23, consideration and appropriate action on the appointments of Andrew Mundy to the Historic District, Lynn Saroy and Erica McKinney to the Community Center Committee. Interviewed all three this evening. Very good individuals. I look forward to them being on our committees. I'll make a motion that those three individuals are appointed to the committees that they are listed as in the Historic District and then 2 to the Community Center. All those in favor? Most anticipated portion of our evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Thank you, folks. All right, people are gonna start taking